Sewing is both an art and a trade. It's been a profession and a way of life since the Middle Ages. It requires a keen eye and patient hand. Today, we'll be discussing different technical methods that contribute to a final garment. For instance, the importance of fabric choice, or hand sewing versus machine sewing, as well as what sewing can mean for the people who dedicate hundreds of hours to the craft. Stay tuned to find out what goes on behind the seams. Hello and welcome to Behind the Seams. My name is Karen Owecki, where we will be taking a closer look at the construction and process that goes into the creation of garments. Today in the studio with us are mother and daughter seamstress duo, Carol Meyer and Rebecca Alm, here to talk about their extensive experience in this field, as well as show us some of their creations. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
I have questions for you, Carol. I hear you have been sewing for over 70 years. How did you start?
When I was 3 years old, my grandmother put a needle into my hand because both my grandmothers were seamstresses. One was a furrier. So I started making knots in thread when I was 3 years old.
And Rebecca, how did you start your business?
My girlfriend and I went out to lunch, and she had mentioned that there is a need for a seamstress, and she had been to my wedding, which is our wonderful gown over here, and so she thought that I might be interested in. 12 years later, still going strong.
So when did your mom put a needle in your hand?
When I was 3. And that particular piece of artwork is still at my shop to point out that anybody can learn how to sew.
How wonderful. How would you both describe your careers?
My career was very different from my love of sewing. I'm a physical education teacher for MPS for many years. And sewing is a way that I enjoy being peaceful and extending my artistic creativity. And it's been a lot of fun to be able to make a lot of the costumes, their bridal gowns, their first communion dresses, their prom dresses.
How would you say sewing has impacted your relationship as mother and daughter?
Well, to be very honest, couldn't get much closer. We can talk every single day. We have a lot to talk about, and we just trust each other to the point where we're able to, kind of feel out how everything is going just by, being around each other.
And what is the decision process between choosing some of the materials that you use?
Materials are very tactile, and you have to feel them to be able to see how they work on the body, to be able to see how they flow, and that's the problem that we're having right now is some of the stores are closing down, and you can't get that feeling, that tactile feeling on the internet. So you go to stores in the city if we can, but there are stores in Chicago that we go to like Fishman's and Vogue, and they're factory stores, so they have a lot more fabric than they have in Milwaukee. And we've also had a trip to Vogue, to Mode in Chicago.
How exciting. One of my favorite shows is Project Runway. So
floor to ceiling, one whole floor is just silk.
Ooh. So what are your favorite types of garments to make?
I love to make costuming right now. Ren Fair, this is an indication of some of the Ren Fair things, but I also go to a ball every year. The Bal Moscovy is just at the Wisconsin Club, just a couple blocks from here. And it gets to do a little bit of research, and you get to do a little bit of exploring. And cooperation between you and your spouse.
And what about you? What kind of garments do you like to make?
I love to make costumes as well, but I also love working with the brides. I love working and making sure that their experience in their most stressful time in life is one that works out as smoothly as possible for them, and they get every dream that they ask for.
What are some of the stories, quickly, of the costumes and outfits behind us?
This one right here, this is my wedding dress.
Lovely.
And I have this on display at my shop, so I talk to my brides all the time about it. And they always ask me the same questions, did you make your wedding dress? Like, no, I did not get to make my wedding dress because my mother wouldn't let me, because that was her gift to me.
So you made this wedding dress.
So we cooperatively designed it and she built it.
How long did it take you?
Well, the 28 garments for her wedding, because she had a Renaissance wedding, took me 9 months.
All 28 costumes in 9 months.
That
So
is
high class Elizabethan.
That is amazing.
The only thing we were missing were those big collars.
Thank you so much for that discussion. Before we see some of Carol's work up close, we observe how garments can impact the people around us with store owner and custom seamstress Rebecca Peelan.
A little bit about my background in sewing. I learned to sew when I was a child. Everybody sewed. My mom sewed everything, my grandmas, my aunts, everybody sewed. The body is the canvas, the fabric is the media. I love to make people look good. You took apart old things and made new things, and I first used an electric sewing machine when I was 8 years old, but I sew for a lot of people. Usually people who can't buy clothes off a rack. They're either too tall or too short or too fat or too thin, or they want something that they can't find, like a simple black cocktail dress. Or I sewed a suit for a guy for his wedding. He wanted one in corduroy with tails and a top hat. You know, you couldn't find that in the store. Things that I really like to do would be starting from scratch and designing something together with a customer and having it turn out and be beautiful. About the second or third day I was open, somebody walked in and asked me to sew her wedding. And that was probably the first one. There's probably been 300 or 400 since then. The design process starts with ideas presented to me by the customer. And 30 years ago, that used to be somebody arriving with a notebook full of magazine pictures and drawings and little business cards in little pockets. Today they show up with their phone. And there's like 22 websites on there that they have. I like this top, I like that skirt, I like this fabric, I like this color, this is how I want my girls to look, this is what my mom wants. So my first question is, would you please send that to me in an email so I can print it out? Because I need that to look at when I make that dress or when I work with you. And then we make a prototype, which is like a mock-up. And so that's usually made out of either the lining fabric or a different fabric like a cotton muslin or something like that. That first prototype, that becomes the pattern. So I either pin it the way people want it, or we change it all together, or it becomes what it's going to work for everybody. I sew for a couple of performance groups. I designed the costumes for the Dancing Grannies for the winter. I still work with the Serena Polish group. I designed the costumes for the Italian group. And you work with people who run the show, and they tell you what they want and how they envision it, and then you make one and show everybody, and they say yes or no, and then like in the case of the Grannies, this year they have 30 members, so that was a big job. When we were young, when I was young, and I and my siblings, clothes were expensive, and fabric, I mean, it was cheap. You could save money by sewing. Nowadays, really, if you have to pay somebody to sew for you, the garment is probably more expensive than what it would be if you bought a cheap one off the rack. So the difference is the labor, the cost of labor. And I know this a long time ago, and I admit it, but I think I made my wedding dress for under $100. Okay, so this dress is the original. This is the mom, and this is the daughter. Her dress is made from the mother's dress. The underdress here is this one. When she takes the skirt off, it becomes that one, and this is her mom. I made both of those. And then these two are her sons, and their baptismal suits are made out of the skirt from this dress. So there's 3 generations here of all the same fabric. That's cool. I just love to sew. I don't think there's anything favorite about it. What I like is the people, and when people are happy, it's a very good job.
It's so interesting to see how the fabric has been with the family for 3 generations. It really demonstrates a level of sustainability that is not as common in the current clothing market. With that, Carol, I see we have this piece that you've made here. Can you tell me about it?
Well, when we decide to do something for the ball, costuming for the ball, when we have a period costume, we spend at least 6 months doing research. So this time was my husband's time to decide. And so he decided that Captain Morgan was the costume that he wanted. So there was a lot of research that we did so that we would know exactly what happened, not as a costume, but as the real clothing of the time. So he decided on Captain Morgan. I had to decide on something that would fit with him. So I decided on Elizabeth Swann, Pirate King from Pirates of the Caribbean. And it was a lot of challenges for these particular costumes. The baldric that you see over here was designed so that all of the gold embroidery on there was done on my computer. It took me 20 times more time to be able to design it than it was to sew it. So it takes a lot of time to do the designing here, and then the sewing on the sewing machine doesn't take as much time. You press a button, your stitches come out, but the repeat on there has to be perfect. It has to be on a perfect piece of material. So the brocade in the back and the brocade on the lining is authentic to that time period, and so is the velvet. Although the velvets that we get now have some polyester blends in them that makes them more versatile. But in his time, he would have all velvet in his.
So how many different techniques do you think you have used on both of these?
The techniques are very different when you're working with leather. I had to be very careful on whether my sewing machine could actually sew the leather. So we have a lot of trims that are going on the edges. The major part of sewing a costume or a period costume is the fit, to make sure that the fit is correct. So the techniques that you use literally have to fit in with the fabrics, and they have to fit in with the kind of things you're doing. The jabot over here is made from old doilies that used to be on the tops of the dressers. So those are kind of a recycled thing. And it's very difficult to find trims these days. So it took a lot of time to be able to find the trims. The techniques that you use, literally, you'd start with the very basics. You know, the straight stitches and a lot of the trims are involved with making sure that everything lies flat. And your favorite your favorite tool to use is your steam iron.
Yes. So how long did it take for each of these?
To design them, it probably took about 6 months. To
Just
sew
to
them,
just design
just
them.
to design them. To sew them, it took about 2 months.
Okay. So you talked about the leather, you talked about this. So how many different machines do you need?
Well, actually, you can do it all on one machine. But if you've got 2 machines, you can do the embroidery while you're doing the sewing. And then my husband, at the same time, as you can see the hooks down here at the bottom,
Yes.
the hooks there are for his swords. He will dress up in any costume as long as he can have a sword.
And again, remind me, what were these used for?
These are for the ball Muscovy, the masked ball that the Polish community puts out. The Serena Folk Dance Troupe has a fundraiser every year, and it's black tie and tail or period costume, and we love to be able to dance. We were just there the other day. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, but a lot of it has to do more with finding out what is appropriate for the time period.
So then, is there a king and queen of this ball?
Actually, the king and queen of the ball would mostly be the one that gets the most attention for their costumes.
I'm thinking it had to be you.
Yes, we do get a lot of attention for the costumes, but it's a lot more fun. Our friend Ada Jivanowska invited us the first time and said, I want you to bring the level of costumes up a little bit. And she says, I can see that you can do it. So every year we try to have just a little bit more detail, a little bit more creativity. So that's the fun part of doing things like that. The fun part of having a spouse that will be able to work with you is that you can design things around him and for him, and no matter what you do, he's going to smile. So,
And I'm sure he was smiling all evening, as were you.
yes, and a lot of the fabrics that you find, sometimes they're layered. I think the twirly and the sparkly are things that go with costumes really well, and it's fun to be able to do things like that at the ball.
How wonderful. Thank you so much for showing this, Carol. Your work is beautiful.
Thank you.
We've spoken a lot about custom garments and tailoring, but now we have a short piece on a different kind of tailoring with Nancy Leahy. She's what's called an on-set tailor. She is hired by department stores to come on set and do quick fittings for their advertisements. She gives us a demonstration of how quickly she has to turn those garments around for the camera.
Okay. Usually I've been having a lot like that. What do you like to use? Oh yeah, I just walked in and I picked up some dinner and I don't think I was honestly in bed.
What I do is fit the garment to the model. I do children, men, and women, and fit the garment to the model, and I have to make it work for the camera, not for a client that's wearing it to an event. I think this is too full for your arm. And then we'll take this all the way down to the hem, and I'll do the same on the other side, and we'll see how we do. All right? And then I think we can get started. The model goes into the fitting room, takes off the dress, hands it out to me. I sit down right over here, zip down those side seams that I pinned, hand it back to her. She puts it on and then goes on to either set or into hair and makeup. So that's the next process. And then I'll do the other side to match, and then we'll do a quick press. And then we will put it back on our model and do our final fit. Let me see how we did here. All right, let's have you turn back around. Check the back side. I like it. All right, wonderful. Thank you very much.
That's just another job to be explored in sewing. Nancy's job is crucial to advertisement, but most wouldn't know about it. That's how you know she's doing her job. We're once again joined by Rebecca Alm, who will go more in depth about the process of creating these elaborate garments. Hi, so what is the purpose for this particular piece?
This piece is actually also for the ball. We were going to do the Three Musketeers, which is the partner for this one is right behind you. So this is the Three Musketeers and Lady de Winter.
So it was your husband as one of the musketeers.
My husband, my father, and my girlfriend's husband.
Oh, how lovely.
And so we all had swords. I included had my sword. But we had decided to do the French Renaissance, and I was struggling with what I wanted to make. And so I actually had to ditch one of the ideas, and I made this one in 2 weeks.
So how do you start the design process?
First, you find your inspiration, and I found mine on a movie called La Femme de Musketeer. The final scene is this dress, but it's in silver. And so once we figured out that, I could find the fabrics. Going to Chicago, we went and found a bunch of things, but you can cycle things from anywhere. The bottom skirt here is a wonderful brocade, but it is actually curtains. So you can find them anywhere.
It has this design in it.
Yes,
already.
this is just purchased that way, and we didn't have to do that. But for the arms here, we did a little bit of research on how to create the arm sleeves and the big poof, and all of the pearls are hand done. They're actually sea pearls, and then the flowers on the inside all had to get painted by hand and sewn on by hand, and along with the mask that we have. And she also has a nice little cape.
So how many techniques would you say was used for this particular dress?
If we're just talking techniques, there's probably at least 75.
75
There's at least
techniques.
75. A technique, how you put things together, how you decide to design it, it's all trying to figure out the best way to get the look that you're going for. For instance, this dress and one of my other ones is a Victorian gown. You have to have a specific shape in order to make that dress look perfect. This one has a steel corset that comes with it. So in order for us to get that particular shape, you need to get sucked in there. And so that's a whole nother garment that you have to make, and it has to be sturdy and strong. So we don't want to skimp on that one.
So you were talking about the technique. So all the little embroidery on here, you did that yourself?
These we found.
Okay.
This is one of the fabrics that we found down in the bridal industry down in Chicago. Most of the stuff for this particular gown was purchased here, but this particular one I splurged on. that little undergarment, which has the beading on it, and I deal with that kind of fabric every day as a bridal seamstress. And so I'm very familiar with working with it and being able to embellish and to know when that's not necessary. And
Are there stores around town that you particularly like to go to for your fabric?
well,
Or would that be giving a secret away?
there's the obvious choices that we're having problems with right now. Joann's did have a very nice. They made it a point to have a very good bridal industry that everybody can reach to.
Right.
But some of the really spectacular stuff, we have to go down to Fishman's.
So is there anything else you want to talk about? Maybe the musketeer outfits?
So the musketeer outfit, my mother also created. She did 3 duplicates, and that one she created the starburst in the middle. She did the embroidery and the design work on that one, and she also put together all the silk behind it. We also have to make masks for this because it's a masked ball. So everybody has to, we've all made our own little masks, and I love this one. It's got little danglies on your face. So we have a lot of photo shoots when we go to the ball. But everywhere we go, no matter whether it's with the bridal gown, which I've gotten to wear 5 times. So we went and we took it to Vegas, to the Excalibur, and did a trip around. We've been to the Ren Fair in Minnesota and the Ren Fair here in Bristol. And so we liked being able to find more places that we can use them.
How wonderful. Vegas. So did you actually pack your outfit and take it there?
We did. Both of our outfits, we actually had a whole nother bag, and there's a hoop skirt that goes around it, and we got myth, and we were able to have a little bit of fun with that. I actually sewed fans inside my dress.
That's amazing. This is our time today. I'd like to thank our guests for sharing their work with us. It's been very eye-opening to see the details that goes into your work. As well as thank you to our viewers. Thank you for joining us behind the seams.